recorded session. Um,
Hello.
Hi, we've just pressed record, so just as long as you're all aware that the meeting is being recorded, this means that it'll be available for you to rewatch, to share with anybody that you'd like to share it with. And if you have missed any of our previous sessions, we've had an introduction to smart towns, and we've also had an introduction to the digital building blocks of smart towns. So if you're interested in catching up on those sessions as well, you can let me know. In terms of housekeeping as well, next week we will have turning data into decisions, which will be hosted by Gary Howell, who I believe is also on this call. Hi, Gary. And then we'll be having a short break until the new year. We'll be picking up, hopefully based on the feedback that we get. So it's really important to us that you do fill out the feedback surveys that we'll send out following the sessions. Just finish letting people in, and then I will start my introduction. So in the meantime as well, I just wanted to let you know that we do try and offer any sessions in Welsh if there is a demand for it. So if this is something that you'd like to see, please do let us know about that as well. Os da chi eisiau gofyn unrhyw gwestiwn yn Gymraeg, if you'd like to ask any questions in Welsh, that is completely welcome as well. Priyan, my colleague, will translate those for you. So yeah, croeso chi wneud hynna. So I will start sharing my quick introduction slides just because I know that we're mindful of the time. Can everybody see my screen? Can someone give me a thumbs up? Yep, perfect. Okay. So for those of you who don't know, Smart Towns Wales, we're a Welsh Government funded programme of support. We've been running for over 2 years now, since the year of Smart Towns. Back in 2021. So I'm Kiki Stavros. I'm the project manager of the programme, and I work for Mentor Morn. We're a social enterprise based in North West Wales, with obviously Pan Wales project as well. We're joined today by my colleague Rhian, who is in charge of the North regions. And we also have our colleague Holly, who is in charge of the Mid and Midwest areas. She's actually in a conference in Aberystwyth today, so she's not able to join us. So you're welcome to contact any of us, depending on your regions, or, to reach out to anybody. We're obviously a small team, so we're on hand to support you. So just a quick bit of background, if you are new to this, what is a smart town? So a smart town uses information or data from different sources like sensors, Wi-Fi systems, and then that information is used by decision makers, by business owners to run things more efficiently across the town. So we've engaged with towns all over Wales, and we're starting to really see some great case studies come out now, which I'm sure Owen will be referring to over the course of the workshop. So what do we offer? We offer guidance, workshops like these, networking opportunities. We showcase a whole range of success stories, and we have tools and resources on our websites. Now, one of these resources is the place plan. So I'll just give a little bit of context there for you. So as part of the Year of Smart Towns, we worked closely with Owen Davies to come out with 10 placemaking plans across Wales. So these plans involved, consulting with the community, finding out what kind of digital building blocks were in place, what was necessary. And in lots of cases, like in Wrexham, this has acted as a real catalyst for the Smart Towns progress to happen. So like I said, we've got lots of amazing case studies coming out of this now. For those of you who don't know Owen Davies, he's a placemaking consultant and the founder of Owen Davies Consulting. He specialises in town and city centre regen, and is a member of the High Street Task Force Experts Panel for England, but we won't hold that against him. So like I said, we've worked closely with Owen for over 2 years now, so you're in really great hands. So without further ado, I will pass over to Owen. And please feel free to follow us and keep in touch.
Diolch, Kiki. Good afternoon. So I'm Owen Davies, and I'm joined today by my colleague Adam. So Adam, I'm sure we'll get a chance to say hello and introduce himself in a second. but my background is in urban planning, economic development, and regeneration. My background is as a town planner, that kind of the placemaking element that I come from. Adam, do you just want to say a few words about yourself and then I'll crack on? Well, Adam, you're going to say hello? Your microphone off?
Oh, sorry about that. I got lost in the windows. Yeah, thank you, Owen. Yeah, hi everyone. Yeah, so I've been working with Owen for the best part of the year now, focusing on our digital placemaking, which we're going to be talking about today. Previously, I worked for a Welsh local authority. It had a digital role there, so I was sort of at the coal face of trying to implement smart towns and digital projects. So taking a lot of that learning into the work I've been doing with Owen and developing our digital placemaking approach.
Great. Thanks, Adam. Just to say, in addition to, just in terms of our credentials, High Street Task Force as was mentioned, but we are also a signatory to the Placemaking Charter in Wales, which I know many other consultancies and organisations are as well, and I'll refer to that later on. So through our kind of day-to-day placemaking consultancy, we identified a few years ago, a little bit of horizon scanning on our part was the importance of digital in terms of placemaking, and we became quite immersed at that time in a lot of the early work that Smart Towns Cymru programme were doing. And like many of you maybe on the call today, we were kind of exploring what's this all about and trying to really understand something that sometimes feels a little bit baffling. But through a process of self-learning and developing our wider knowledge, we kind of developed this understanding how digital can actually be a much more embedded element of placemaking. Now, you're probably going to ask me, what do I mean by placemaking? That's something I'll come on to a second, but it's just worth saying that in addition to the pilots that we've worked on with the Smart Towns Cymru programme, which has really kind of launched this work, it's interesting to see that some local authorities have picked up on this, and now we're kind of got to the point of working with 20 or so towns and cities across Wales in terms of what we are referring to as digital placemaking. A little bit about us. We are a Welsh consultancy. We're based here in Abergavenny in South Wales, and we work across England and Wales. So we kind of got a perspective on this from across the UK, not just in this side of the border. Thank you, Adam. So just in terms of what we're going to cover today, there's 4 parts really. This is kind of mentioned in the promotion for today's event. We want to kind of introduce you to what digital placemaking is, and we also want to tell you how we've gone about developing digital place plans. We'll identify how a problem or opportunity in your town can be the real kind of the catalyst for this, and really focus in on the importance of local stakeholders in driving forward digital placemaking. And we'll also introduce you to delivery. Now, we've worked with Kiki and the team to develop a delivery manual. It's kind of a really good document that you can refer to. You probably might not read it from cover to cover, but there's a lot of resources out there, some that we've been fortunate enough to help to develop, which are based on what actually happens on the ground. How do you go about doing this? Because we've got a lot of experience that we're developing in Wales, and we've captured some of that as well. Okay, we're going to pause as we go along for questions rather than leaving them all at the end as well. So, okay, thanks, Adam. We are going to try and weave into our presentation today about Abergavenny. Now, we've chosen Abergavenny for a couple of reasons. It was the first pilot that we started. It's also where we're based, and it's also actually made an enormous amount of progress in a relatively short space of time. So there's lots of good reasons why we want to refer to Abergavenny. Some of you may know the town well, some may not know it at all, but it's kind of led to a point that they got national recognition in the UK for having invested in digital as part of a Britain in Bloom competition, which we kind of know a lot of towns in Wales are really interested in and often invest time, money, and resources into kind of putting themselves forward for. So we'll refer to that, and Adam will pick up on that towards the end. Just to say that we've got a town now that now has a dashboard, data that's available, that they're using even today to kind of manage the planting and the green infrastructure in their town. And that's only kind of happened in the last year. Thank you, Adam. So just a little intro to placemaking. Thank you. So what is placemaking? So if you kind of put the digital bit to one side for a moment, in old money, I suppose we would call it regeneration, master planning, action planning, design briefs. All of these things still exist, of course, but placemaking is kind of maybe a bit more of an accessible way to kind of understand how we're talking about how people, places, buildings all interact in a unified way in terms of overarching design, thinking about principles of how people interact and use these spaces and places. In the process that you follow, traditional kind of planning, landscape architecture, urban development skills, you're seeking to inspire people. You're hoping for them to kind of be much more reimagine or influence how a place should look, feel, and function. And the output from this is kind of traditional plans and documents that kind of set out a strategy going forward. In Wales, we have the placemaking principles. I think you kind of would say these are principles that would be easily adopted elsewhere in the UK, and often you see these in other kind of design guides and manuals that you would identify elsewhere in the UK. But the focus is on people and community, location, movement, the mix of uses and the interaction of those uses, and the quality of the public realm. By public realm, think about the spaces that exist between buildings. And also identity, what type of place we're trying to create, what's the kind of the feel and the look and the kind of reputation that places develop through good design, through good implementation of schemes. What's worth saying here in Wales, though, is that whilst digital doesn't get a kind of an explicit mention in the placemaking charter, it's fairly well established now in terms of Welsh Government's view that it's an underpinning element of placemaking, and there's certainly a strong emphasis through its programs that that digital is actually a really foundational element of investment in places going forward, and it's something that they've embedded in their program. And I'll come on to that in a second. Thank you, Adam. Next slide. So what do we mean by digital placemaking? So if you kind of take those kind of place design approaches, it's about thinking of a place also in an increasingly digital world. So we know that data is increasingly important in terms of how everything around us operates. So businesses are doing this. Certainly the national businesses, the multinational businesses are using an incredible amount of information and data to run their operations in our high streets, in our towns right now. It's going on already around you. So why don't we think about that on a place level? How does that data and information, and this is anonymous data, of course, how does that allow you to really think about how your place is going to be looking, feeling, managed in going forward? It also helps stakeholders work out how to invest themselves, whether they feel like they want to invest in technology, collect and analyze and share high quality data. So we're talking about smarter places, the idea that technology can allow you to run a place more efficiently, help you potentially save resources and funding, actually help you to deliver an overall better project or improvement for your town. So that's kind of where digital is. And often we kind of don't, it's kind of almost too difficult for some people to think about that. I kind of think I've been likening this to kind of, we take it for granted, don't we, that there are pipes under the ground that provide water to our buildings, and there's electricity cables that provide power to us wherever we are in our towns and communities. But we should also be starting to take for granted that there's that digital layer that's there, kind of slightly anonymous, that allows us to do things when we need to do it. And that's kind of where digital placemaking starts. Thank you, Adam. So why is it important? Well, I've already mentioned it's everywhere already. And you can either choose, can't you? You can choose either to ignore it or embrace it, and certainly don't hide from it. So it's there and we need to think about it. We can't ignore it. I think that's a kind of a given from our point of view. And also it's important for small places as well as big places. So this idea that cities have kind of been smart cities, and we kind of expect it, don't we, if we visit London or Manchester, Birmingham, that kind of urban transit systems and the like are all being run kind of in a very smart and intelligent way. But why can't small towns think about that? And the risk here, of course, isn't it, that small towns or towns generally are often years behind larger places, and these are the places that we're competing with. Competing for the attention of residents, competing for the attention of investors, competing for the attention of visitors and tourism as well. So towns shouldn't be left behind. And I've kind of stolen that phrase from Vicky Mann at Visit, if you know Vicky, because she uses it all the time. I think it's a wonderful way to say, towns should be thinking about this, because the risk is if you don't think about it now, it would be too late. So this is about embedding a kind of degree of resilience in terms of your town. And we know, because there's really good evidence, and we refer to some of this in our work, that getting it right will actually have a big impact. So that's kind of our kind of pitch. Why is this important? Thanks, Adam. Okay, and Kiki's already kind of referenced this, but it enables data-driven decision making. Again, so what's all of this data going to help us with? Well, it might help you to support your economic development, your investment in things that are going to help to grow your place, bring about jobs, and or support existing businesses. You kind of would expect it to do that. It can also improve how you might manage your town and your public realm, the things that you want to address and tackle, whether that's parking, green infrastructure, signage and information, air quality, all of these things you can use. Digital and technology allows you to do in a really efficient way. And it also increases efficiency. So it might actually allow you to deliver more services in a more efficient way, or might actually allow you to make some savings to reinvest elsewhere. And it also, I think, much more importantly, going forward, it allows you to respond to environmental changes in a really smart way as well. We all need to play our part in this kind of big challenge around carbon reduction as well. I think technology is a real key part of that. Thank you, Adam. So still, having said all of that, people may not be convinced. So why bother? Why do we need a plan? So in Wales, and I'm conscious we may have some people on the call today who aren't from Wales, but in Wales, I think we are in a fairly advanced position now, because it's kind of embedded within urban regeneration, within placemaking, and in Wales we have the Transforming Towns programme, that digital has to be part of the thinking around placemaking. And it certainly is expected that there will be ideas coming forward from the towns that will incorporate digital within them. So if we're kind of thinking about urban shaping ideas, projects that come forward, the expectation is that digital has been thought about as at least in part of the early part of the design, and hopefully all the way through to implementation. And of course, making it, I don't apologize for the fact that my job is I'm a plan maker. I think plans are, absolutely critical to everything that we do. So it allows you to be really clear having a plan about the challenges and the opportunities. It allows you to articulate what your priorities are. And by doing that, of course, you try to avoid doing too much too quickly. Resources are limited, time and capacity is limited, and the plan is a really good way of kind of putting the right kind of pace into the work that you want to do. And plan making itself is also a really useful way of understanding how local decisions are made. Who is it that's going to be involved in the decisions, and actually also starting to build those connections across the people who are going to help you to deliver your plan. So these are all kind of good plan making principles that don't necessarily apply to digital, but the reason why we recommend digital placemaking is because it's new. For some it's fairly novel, for some it's quite scary, and the process of making a plan is a really clever way, we think, of having a clear strategy in place. Because the risk is, and we know this has happened in many places already, people, a little bit like me on my phone, I get a notification say that you need one of these, so I download the app, and now I've got something new, and I'm not really sure what it does, and I do it, and then I forget about it, and it sits on my phone, and then I delete it about a year later. It's a little bit like that sometimes with technology. Towns might get drawn into the bright lights of a piece of kit, or maybe attracted to something that seems really novel and exciting, and it arrives and it lands, and then people wonder what else are we going to do, or maybe it doesn't last very long, and maybe get switched off after the year because there isn't the money to support it. So we're kind of trying to avoid some of those problems as well. Lastly on this, I'd just say what we recognise is that hopefully in maybe 5 years' time, you won't need a digital placemaking plan, because actually it becomes much more mainstream. And this is really what the driving work behind Smart Towns Cymru is all about, isn't it? It's kind of building awareness, acceptance and understanding. So we get to the point that we almost put ourselves out of a role here, because it becomes a broadly accepted part of placemaking and plan making that you have digital in that approach. What we're doing now at this point in time with our work is kind of recognizing that we need to fill some gaps. We need to fill a gap because a plan's already been written and they didn't think about digital, or a plan is being prepared and digital needs to form part of that. So it kind of doesn't necessarily need to be a plan on its own. It can be integrated within existing plan making work. So, okay, thanks, Adam. So the principles of our approach, as you would expect, place-based, we're kind of thinking about places first and foremost, and we think about how digital integrates into that. We always take a long-term view that, we're building towards a level of acceptance and use of technology, but we recognize that every town is on its own journey, and it will probably be starting at a point that needs to build confidence and understanding in plan making. So that's kind of our long-term view, but we recognize the need to take short-term action. Our approach is also about demystifying. Funnily enough, we try not to talk too much about technology. We actually try to talk about what the outcomes of using technology will be and the benefits of it. And we are also tech agnostic, which sounds a bit weird, but basically what we're saying is we're not aligned to any particular product or service that technology that's out there. We're not advocating a particular service or a particular scheme. But I think it's worth saying, and I think, again, this is something that I would say that Wales is at a leading edge of, is that we do have a developing ecology in Wales of people who are designing, testing, delivering platforms and technology. And I actually think that's a real advantage for digital placemaking in Wales, is that we have a lot of the skills and knowledge, and we're learning a lot of things in Wales, and we're testing it in Wales. And we can build on that as a platform for us to deliver digital placemaking in Wales, I think, much more effectively than if we were kind of off looking for people to help us out across the world or across the UK. So whilst we don't advocate a particular product, we do know that there's some really great ones, and particularly in Wales, it's great to work with Welsh companies as well. Okay, so the digital place plans themselves. So we look at how a place can use digital and data to achieve its goals, consider whether it can help in terms of where a place is managed, whether it's about the business community, whether it's about tourism, about addressing environmental concerns, its movement, safety. Antisocial behavior and safety is often one of those kind of issues that kind of crops up in towns routinely as an issue that needs to be addressed, and does technology play a part? So we look at that. And as I already said, we kind of focus on what it's going to do, not necessarily the technology itself. It's always important through the process that we follow that we use case studies and resources, because actually real life examples are absolute gold dust, and we're building up an enormous amount of evidence of that in Wales, of things we can point to that people would recognize as towns a little bit like their own, and say, oh, if they've done it and it worked, why shouldn't we try it as well? So that's really important to our approach. So the plan making process itself is set out over a number of stages. It's a journey, as I've already mentioned. So what we do is, very kind of traditional approaches. We kind of look at what's already there. Kind of look at your strategies and your local plans. And do you already have digital priorities that might be coming down from a local authority level or something? So we need to understand what the starting point is. In terms of that kind of policy framework that's going to say, do we support this? What's going on? How does digital play its part? We also look at partnerships. So, every town kind of has formal and informal ways of working, and town councils would be or community councils are an obvious starting point, but there'll be business groups, formal and informal. There'll be tourism groups, there'll be festival and event organizers, and each one of those may have a different level of knowledge and confidence around digital. So we engage with as many partners as we can early on in the process to kind of just scope out what they're doing, what their knowledge is, what their understanding of smart and digital in place is. But we always use that as an opportunity to kind of say, well, these are the things that other places are doing. The kind of technical bit is the digital place assessment. So we do actually walk around places and look for white boxes up on lampposts, because what we realized is that actually a lot of towns have technology and digital in place, but they don't actually know it's there. It's fairly anonymous. In some cases, it's a person in a local authority that knows it's there, and it hasn't been communicated widely. So we do a lot of work around understanding what's there. A lot of it is often hidden. A lot of it you can actually find online, because there are maps of technology that's been implemented, like footfall counters and LoRaWAN gateways, which are kind of things that are kind of routine building blocks. So we know where to find that information. We present that in our plan, and we kind of have a really clear understanding of what the starting point is in terms of digital. There can be things as more routine level, particularly when we look at broadband coverage, fiber coverage, because we've done work in places like Pontypridd where we realized that there was one street actually in the town centre that had really poor connectivity in relation to the rest of the town centre, and that was simply because the level of investment hadn't been made. And that was coming up time and time again with businesses. So we have to kind of address some of those kind of foundational elements in plan making, because if you don't address those, then you won't really take those businesses and those stakeholders on the journey you want to, if they think the basic building blocks aren't in place. And as you'd imagine, we do a lot of engagement with stakeholders leading to production of plans. So actually, if we weren't talking about digital, most people in the room today who are used to kind of plan making processes will say, well, this isn't actually much different to what we've done with our master plan and like. And you're absolutely right, but actually underpinning this is actually we're trying to understand where a town is on its journey. So we set that out fairly easily to our stakeholders and say, actually, this is where you are. So most towns in Wales, if we're honest, are going to be at that kind of foundational level between 0 and 1 on our chart, that they're going to be just getting going, or they may be just starting out in terms of their own digital journey. So what we do is kind of say, this is where you are now. This is the diagnostic, the assessment of you in terms of your starting point. And our recommendations are most likely to focus on moving just one step forward, because we think that's really important, rather than kind of jumping from 0 to 3 in terms of being really specialist overnight, because that's likely to fail unless you kind of build confidence and momentum in the process. Again, I mentioned a couple of times the basic building blocks. So we use this phrase, every town should kind of have some basic building blocks in place. And these are the things that we focus in on in terms of our plan making. So already mentioned, it should be a given. Every town should have full fibre broadband. You'd also hope that 4G and 5G mobile digital coverage would be in place. Yeah. You'd expect, maybe much more so, that every town should have a public Wi-Fi system. And then also a LoRaWAN coverage. Now, by this point, some people might say, well, what are we talking about in terms of LoRaWAN? So these are kind of low wave local area networks that allows you to connect sensors to the cloud to do clever things with data, basically. So it's a little white box that allows you to connect sensors around your town. So it allows you to have a much more data-driven environment. The things that we know stakeholders and economic development agencies are also very interested in is, does the town have this kind of social digital presence? Does it have, what's its digital skills level like? Are businesses confident in using data? And also really basic building blocks, like, do you have a high quality website? What we recognize is, whilst the top layer of these building blocks actually might not be in our kind of mindset, smart towns, it's kind of what you'd expect. If you don't get those right, often the other things that you want to do aren't going to get much traction. So these are kind of the building blocks that we can say, do you have these in place? What's missing? Once we've got a better understanding of this, we know where you can go next in terms of plan making. Okay, thanks, Adam. So we mentioned earlier that we've been working across a large number of towns. We just thought we'd put this up because it kind of gives you a flavour of the kind of types of towns we've worked in terms of the experience that we've got. So Abergavenny we'll refer to in a bit, but we've worked in places like Bangor, Treorchy, Wrexham, Pontypridd, Kidwelly, Port Talbot. So these are kind of post-industrial, agricultural, tourism and destinations. So we've got a lot of knowledge from a variety of towns, some towns that are large, some towns that are quite small. So, Wrexham compared to Kidwelly are very, very different indeed, as you'd imagine. So thanks, Adam. Okay, so that's kind of just an introduction to digital placemaking. We're going to take you into a little bit more detail about how we go about it, but I just thought we'd pause there because we're kind of giving you a bit of an overview of where this is coming from and why we think it's worthwhile. So just thought it'd be useful to pause, Kiki, if you're happy to, just for a few minutes. If people got any questions at this point, we're quite happy to move on and tell you a little bit more. Go and drill down a few more layers, I thought.
Absolutely. Great, Owen. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? You're welcome to pop them in the chat or to unmute yourself. Otherwise, I guess we can carry on then, Owen. If you do think of anything as we go, you're welcome to pop them in the chat.
Yeah, I'll keep an eye on the chat now. Adam's going to talk for a few minutes now, so I'll keep an eye on the chat if there's any questions coming in. Thanks.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Owen. Yeah, so the next sort of stage we wanted to talk about then was how do you go about identifying the problem or the opportunity in your town that you want to address with your Smart Towns project? Um, Owen said before that our digital placemaking approach takes a place-based approach, and what does that entail? Well, it entails sort of solving a problem or capitalising opportunity. Now, if you say why is that important, then I mean, you shouldn't be doing things for the sake of it. I think there's definitely a danger with digital projects, particularly, but I guess all projects are temptations to do them because you think it's a fun thing to do. Whereas we don't need to be doing that. Needs to be about problem solving or making the most of opportunity. If you do things for the sake of it, chances are it might, like Owen mentioned earlier, run great for a little bit and then flop later on. Also, if you've spent that time scoping out the problem or the opportunity, it gives you that bit more credibility when you speak to stakeholders, I guess. And you can have that conversation about your place rather than about the technology, which from our experience means people are much more likely to sort of get where you're coming from and get on board as well. And then also, just by doing the process of identifying the problem opportunity, it helps you sort of fight that temptation to rush in and try to do something. And it makes you think about the long-term sustainability of what you're doing. So in terms of how you can do this, again, it's not rocket science. You've probably already done it to some extent by the time you're sort of drawing up your Smart Town project. I think the key thing is you don't have to start from scratch. In most cases, there's usually stuff out there already that you can use, and you should really look at that first. So we'd advocate sort of two main things: this caption and delivery manual, which we'll talk about later, but start by having a look at what relevant sort of documents already exist. They could be at different levels. They could be at a sort of growth deal or regional level. There might be stuff that's applicable there in terms of the problems, opportunities facing your place. Then at local authority level, there almost certainly will be strategies or plans that discuss places and problems, opportunities, and it might highlight areas where digital could play a role in addressing them. And then the best, obviously, is at a place level. That might be a place or a placemaking plan. It might be a master plan. It could be a sort of strategy, town council strategy, for example, or it could be some sort of local action plan, maybe around tourism. Scope out, find those documents, review them. They should be real gold mines of information about what problems need addressing. And then the other big thing to do, obviously, probably more important than that, is to engage with your stakeholders, which we'll talk about more fully in a few minutes' time in its own section. So if we look at Abergavenny then, back to our example, when we started working with Abergavenny a couple of years ago, I guess, it didn't have an overarching strategy or plan. It doesn't have a placemaking plan. The town council, I think, had quite an old strategy document, but it wasn't particularly helpful. And there were no sort of master plans in place and nothing recent anyway. And then we conducted the sort of digital place assessment that Owen referred to, and we looked at the digital infrastructure in place in the town already. And there was some, as you'd expect, there is in most places, but quite a lot of it was quite old, and a lot of it was underused, and in some cases it was just completely unknown because it had been put in place without proper engagement. And like Owen suggested, that person maybe moved on, or just haven't been communicated properly, hasn't been built into a plan, and therefore it's just sat on a wall and gone a bit mouldy or yellowed over time. And we also identified then, like in many other towns, that it has a really fragmented and pretty low-key online presence. And our digital place plan went into that in a lot more detail. More positively, we did know that the local authority was planning on making an investment into digital infrastructure, which is really great news. But it was pretty clear that they, I think, needed a steer as how best to use it at the place level, and we had the opportunity to do that. So again, I don't know if how many people know Abergavenny, but in terms of opportunities and challenges, it's got a lot going for it. Sort of speciality town, I suppose. It's busiest in summer, and then you get another peak at Christmas. It's got a lively town centre, good market culture. It's got a sort of reputation for being quite a foodie place, a big food festival, and it's, I guess, a gateway to the Bannockburn National Park. And so obviously that popularity creates challenges, but also presents opportunities. That long list on the left is they're all the areas we identified where digital could play a role in supporting the town centre. And I just see it's a long list. There we go. When we conducted the digital place assessment, as you'll see in the top right, we identified that they had quite a lot of digital infrastructure already, as I mentioned. So they had a digital notice board that was managed by the town council, had a mixture of some automated footfall counters, but not particularly smart ones, to be honest. Some of those were privately in shopping centres. There was no sort of single system in place around the town centre. Like I referred to, it had a old town Wi-Fi system in place, but this was pretty much defunct. Had some nice sort of digital heritage things. It had sort of QR codes around the town, which were nice. But it had that sort of poor online presence as well. No unified high quality website. The plan then sort of identified priorities, sort of digital priorities, and it identified four main ones. It suggested we install the proposed smart sensors in Lorowan Gateway, get in place those basic building blocks to allow things to happen in the future. We said, right, events and festivals are really important to the town, so they should be supported, and there are opportunities for how digital can do that. Need better data around footfall, because it's very patchy at the moment, so that's a big priority as well. And then finally, that online presence really needs improving. For a popular visitor destination, the online presence is letting it down. And we broke those priorities down then into multiple actions as well. Now, as part of the sort of exploitation of that new infrastructure, we referenced Abergavenny and Bloom and the idea that you could use the Internet of Things to manage your green infrastructure a bit better, so you could monitor planters and things. So we suggested it as a potential action, but to be honest, it wasn't near the top of the list in terms of stakeholder priorities until it was announced that Abergavenny was going to represent, I think, Wales in the town category of Britain in Bloom this year. And when that was sort of announced, the town council and the volunteers who managed the planters, they approached us, said, right, this is a fantastic opportunity. Your plan has sort of laid the groundwork and has raised our awareness, and we want to do something. We think that we can manage our green infrastructure better using a smart towns approach, using a digital project. So that's sort of the situation in Abergavenny. We did a lot of work with them through the digital placemaking approach to identify the challenges and the opportunities, what they had in place already, what gaps there were, and we'd set out a plan to address those, which meant that when this opportunity arose, the town council in particular had their awareness raised. They were more knowledgeable about potential for digital, and then they could then come to us and say, right, we've got our perfect opportunity now. What can we do to help? Which we'll come on to talk about in a few minutes' time. Does anyone have any questions or comments about that first stage then, about identifying the problems or your opportunity in a town? If not, we can carry on to engaging key stakeholders.
I just wanted to add there, Adam, that obviously part of our Smart Town service is that we can support that kind of engagement work. So we can come to your town, we can host a workshop where we, engage with all the different stakeholders to find that problem or that opportunity. So if that is something that you'd be interested in, obviously you're welcome to have a chat afterwards or at any point.
Great, thanks, Kiki.
Thanks.
I'll crack on. And again, we'll have more time for questions later. So the next huge job, I suppose, really important, is engaging your key stakeholders. Then it's a critical part of any project, but particularly Smart Towns scheme. Now, why is it important? Well, I'm pretty sure that's Peter Williams and Welsh Government who delivered the session last week. I think, and I hope I've got this right, but I think his phrase is "engage, don't enrage." I think from memory, and I think it's a really good summary. If you don't engage with people, things aren't going to go well in the long term. People won't be bought into what you're doing, and things are more likely to fail. But how do you go about doing that? Well, it's tricky. of course, but we think there are some principles to follow. Firstly, for most people, talking tech is usually a turn off, I'd say. You want to be talking about the place and the opportunities and the outcomes that you want to achieve. They're what people understand. That's what most people want to be thinking about. They don't want to talk about technology. You might find some who do, but they are real, real gems. You want to be talking about what we need to improve in our place, and then how do we go about doing that? And that digital might play a role in it. You certainly don't want to come in and say, I've got this shiny new bit of kit. What can I do? What can I do with it? Because that's just not the way that most people think. Very fair enough. When you do need to talk about the details and the technology, which we need to do to a different extent to different people, really try and demystify it. We mentioned it earlier. It takes a certain amount of knowledge to be able to do that, but that's where the work that Smart Towns program has done has been fantastic. There's so many great resources out there that help demystify this stuff and make it more understandable for people. I'm sure if you're playing Smart Towns Bingo, Owen and I have said without trying not to, we've probably said a lot of the terms that people don't really understand already, like LoRaWAN, IoT, Internet of Things, even sensors and data. I mean, those terms for a lot of people don't make much sense. They're very jargony and hard to understand. It's really important when you engage with people to always remember that. Don't get carried away and start waffling on about technology and smart things, and keep it simple. And then, as Owen mentioned earlier, it's really important to use real world examples when you're talking to people. That's what people understand. Again, we're really lucky with the Smart Towns program. We've got lots of case studies in Wales now, built up in the past 2-3 years. Case studies of where something's been implemented and it's worked, or it hasn't worked perfectly, but it's still there's a lot to learn from that. If you put stuff in a real world context, people are much more likely to get it rather than sort of hypothetical idea. And then this is about engagement, but also about doing, I suppose. When you are engaging with people, suggesting something kind of small and quick, because it really lowers the stakes in a positive way. So if you do something small and sort of tactical, we'd say, if it goes well, then fantastic. You've built confidence and you can go on and do something bigger. If it fails, well, you haven't lost too much resource or pace or enthusiasm, and you can try again. The danger is, I think, always trying to bite off more than you can chew, do this big grand project, whereas actually you need to build people's trust. You need to bring people along with you, and the best way to do that is to do something small and quick and get it done. Really, don't try and do too much too soon. Now, in terms of how you engage with people, again, an enormous subject, and there is no single best approach, as you'd all be aware, because I'm sure everyone's done sort of public engagement before in some sense. There's more information about this sort of suggested strategies and approaches in the delivery manual, which we'll talk about in a bit, but we're not going to go through them all here. One thing we always say, and it's really true, is try and find your sort of local champion, I suppose. Now, the phrase digital champion gets used quite a lot, and Owen and I always get a little bit sort of wary of it because we think our experience has been it sometimes scares people off because they think, oh, digital champion, that means I have to be really digitally savvy. I have to be the person, because that's how the term gets used in some organizations as basically free tech support. Whereas we don't mean that here. We mean someone who sort of wants to champion the idea that you're suggesting. And they sort of see digital as part of that idea. It doesn't mean they have to be the person who knows everything about it, knows all the technical details, and can basically do it themselves. It just means someone who believes in what you're doing and wants to sort of take it on. Of course, if you can find someone who is digitally savvy, then that's fantastic. You may well have come across Clive Davies before in Cardigan. He's a fantastic example of a digital champion, somebody who's really knowledgeable and enthusiastic and good at getting stuff done. But we're not all so lucky as to have a sort of a Clive in our place. But they're always worth finding if you do. And again, I'd say you don't need many people. We've put the plural there in brackets because our experience has been that in most places you're not going to find a lot of people. And actually it's better when you don't. It's better to find a few at best, rather few people who are really enthusiastic and want to drive things forward, than having a room full of people who just sort of look at each other for someone to take it on. We think it's much better if get a sort of smaller turnout, smaller, more engaged group. Is better than having a football stadium full of people who sort of expect other people to take it on. Now, in terms of possible place stakeholders, then again, just flashed up a quick list on screen. It's by no means exclusive. Owen's mentioned some already who aren't on that list, but you'll have town and county councillors, you'll have town and local authority officers, you might have a business improvement district or a sort of chamber of trade or commerce. Local business owners, of course, are fantastic to get involved in this, but they're always a tricky group to engage with. Your place might have a sort of town partnership bringing people together already, in which case fantastic. That's a really sort of ready-made group to engage with, and they should have good links with all the sort of various bits of a place, although they don't always. And of course, there are other community groups who might be really enthusiastic as well. And then, like I mentioned, there might be committees running certain events as well. There might be tourism groups. There may well be lots of others. So a part of the job is mapping out who you've got in your place, really. That's part of our digital placemaking approach, part of the thing we do when we together a digital place plan. So to go back to Abergavenny then, our example. So in the previous sort of stage, we helped them identify sort of priorities and the opportunities. But when it came to engagement then, again, Abergavenny doesn't actually have a town partnership and it doesn't have a business improvement district. Fortunately, what it does have is a nice active town council, and that's both its councillors and officers, and some really active community groups as well, like lots of places in Wales do. And actually it was the town council and the volunteers who identified Britain in Bloom and this as an opportunity and came to us saying, how can we use what you've been talking about and what you've been planning for? How can we use Digital and Smart to help us do this better? They came to us, which is a fantastic example of local groups having been upskilled, sort of taking the principles on and saying, we think we can do something using Smart here. We might need a bit more help to do that, but we think we can do it. So yeah, Abergavenny, another interesting example of a place which in many ways doesn't have, a town partnership, which would be a fantastic way to engage with people. It doesn't have that business improvement district, that obvious way to engage with businesses. But what it did have was that town council and some active community groups, and they came together and identified the opportunity. But just because your place might not have a lot of those stakeholder groups, it doesn't mean you can't do things, obviously. You only need a couple of these groups sometimes to come forward and things progress. So that was a very whistle-stop tour of engagement. Again, could talk about it for days and run huge sessions on it. But does anyone have any questions or comments about the previous two stages, I guess, about identifying opportunities or challenges or engaging key stakeholders? And again, questions about the Abergavenny case study as well. Otherwise, the final stage, which we'll come on to in a second, is about introduction to delivery. And we'll fill in a few more of the blanks about the Abergavenny case study in case people are interested.
I've got a quick question, if that's all right. Alex Shan, the Bladder Morgan Council, and we're currently preparing place-making plans in Penarth, Barry, Cowbridge, and Llanthwaite Major. There's different challenges and successes. Some of the issues that we're having is actually I just wonder how you learned from your how you got on this, engaging with like some of the local people, like the businesses, for example. They're obviously like a key stakeholder, and we've had a number, got 2 events, I think it is, across the towns individually, and we've sought to engage with them, bring them along to these events, a bit of a carrot and stick approach as well. And yet the turnout has been really low, so it's been really frustrating. So we can try as hard as we can to get that face-to-face engagement. It's proven quite a challenge. I mean, we are getting some good output from these events. We just wish that we could get some more people to attend. Is that something you've experienced at all?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Thank you. I'm sure Owen will come in a sec. But yeah, I mean, my pre-prepared question to Owen on this subject was, so how do you get business engaged, Owen? Because it's really hard. I don't think we have a sort of magic source for that. My experience, Owen or chip in, I'm sure, is that small businesses don't tend to come to events. they've probably got a lot of pressures unless they've really identified an issue and it really coalescing around a sort of single issue. If it's sort of an information or more a general event, it's very hard to encourage businesses to be there. Tends to be a much more resource intensive kind of door knocking, one-to-one approach is what's required. But Owen, have you got any thoughts around that?
Yeah, I think sometimes success and engagement comes from if there's a really tangible problem to solve, because there's already a kind of a degree of knowledge around what can happen from your work. Talking about placemaking, I'm sure. Did you say Bailey Glamorgan farm? I think I heard you say, but yeah. So, we've kind of sometimes the title of what we're trying to do in kind of placemaking is kind of not really understood either. So engaging people around that, and even as we say about digital, is difficult to break through. What we've tried to do, and we've had some success in this, is kind of so for example, when we did some work in Crickhowell, it took some time, but basically we know that most businesses in that town are worried about enough car parking spaces. So we started couching the conversation in digital around saying, look, this could do many things, but it might actually help you to manage the parking in your town more effectively. Does that interest you? Or do you experience issues with regards to understanding what the number of people are in your town and what the busiest times of the day are, so that you can change the way that you staff your business and respond to traditional patterns around tourism and stuff. So kind of try to anticipate what the conversations they are already having in their head that you think digital in this case can help to answer or address. So we've kind of tried to play it that way. I think it sometimes works and sometimes it doesn't. And it's just kind of trying to, and I think that's why engagement often needs to follow your own kind of research. You need to understand the place, and I'm sure your towns in Vale very well, but it's kind of understanding those things that people, not just businesses, but other stakeholders are maybe concerned about or worried about, and saying, let's talk about those things, because that gives them a reason to engage. I think that's kind of some of the tactics that we've brought and have to some extent really been successful, and other places can not work at all. So it can come down to the place itself, I think.
Yeah, it can be frustrating at times. You put all this stuff on, like 6 or 7 people turn up, and you offer afternoon sessions and evening sessions. It's travel both. So, but yeah, no, thank you.
Thank you.
I think I'd add to that as well that it is a process getting the people on board. I think we find we'll initially have that session with, like you said, 6, 7 people. They will then say, "Oh, do you know what? We've been talking to our wider group. Would you mind coming back and presenting?" So it's planting the seed really, and then using those as your champions to kind of spread the word and bring more people on board. I guess that goes back to what you were saying about the digital champions then, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely would agree with that. Fantastic. Well, assuming there aren't any more questions, I'll move on to the sort of final section of our workshop, if you like, which is broadly titled An Introduction to Delivery. Obviously, we could talk for, what did I say before? Talk for days, we could talk for weeks, months about actually delivering smart town projects. We don't have time for that. So we're just going to, I guess, flag up some of the key resources that we think people should be looking at to help them plan, I suppose, and deliver, and then fill in the missing pieces of the Acrimony jigsaw to say how they did it, in case that is useful and applicable to other people. So firstly, you're not starting from scratch, which I've said before, but it's true. There's a lot of help and advice out there already. Of the obvious thing to say, but it's true. Start with the Smart Towns Company website. I mean, it's a real wealth of resources built up the past couple of years. There is all sorts of useful stuff on there, which you might have seen before, you might not have. You might think you've seen everything on there before, but I know it gets updated and there's new stuff on there. So that should be the first port of call, I think. To be honest, whether you're in Wales or not, I think, like Owen said, we're ahead of the game compared to a lot of other places, I think, in terms of smaller place smart approaches. So look at the resources that Smart Towns Cymru have. There's specific stuff like a Cisco Meraki handbook. There are loads of case studies, some of which we've produced. There are masterclasses on the YouTube channel, so much more. There are sort of tech showcases for individual products and services. There are sort of days worth of information there. One specific resource that I wanted to flag up, not least because I wrote it, was the Smart Towns Delivery Manual, which we produced, well, I don't know, 6 months ago or something like that. Referred to it a few times already. And there is we did a sort of launch event and presentation when I talked people through it, I suppose, a few months ago, which I think is also on the Smart Town from the YouTube channel. But very briefly, it breaks down delivering a Smart Towns project into 6 key stages. And yeah, the aim is really to provide a guide for sort of stakeholders, people like yourselves, how you design, plan, deliver, and then evaluate place-specific Smart Town projects. I guess its main audience is local authority and town council officers, town centre managers, but I think the content should be useful for anyone who sort of wants to drive a change in their place, whether you're a councillor or a business group or a community organisation. And, you know, like we've said multiple times, one of the biggest things we've learned in developing our digital placemaking approach was that the stuff is demystifying. It's very full of jargon. So the delivery manual is meant to be jargon free as much as possible. It has quite a good glossary as well. So yeah, it's meant to be approachable, it's meant to be understandable. You're not meant to need to sort of be a techie person to understand it. But there should be enough technical information there to get you started as well. So that's available for free in English and Welsh on the Smart Towns Cymru website. And like I said, if you want to hear more of my dulcet tones, you can watch the presentation I did to launch the manual, I think, on the Smart Towns Cymru YouTube channel as well. It's a really great resource, but you know, start with the Smart Towns Cymru website and then go from there. I thought we might be worth mentioning a few practical tools, actually, just very, very briefly. And again, this isn't an exhaustive list, but in terms of getting that to the baseline connectivity data, which might help you address, find out what problems you need to address or what you can do because of what underlying infrastructure you've got. You know, if you want to look at broadband data, I think broadband is really a fantastic resource. Openreach, obviously they have their own fibre checker and things. When you want to look at sort of mobile coverage, you can use something like Cell Mapper, which I know Peter referred to last week. Ofcom published data with a pinch of salt, as do mobile network operators themselves. Again, probably if you've ever struggled to get a mobile signal, you'll realise that their promises aren't always perfect either, but it's definitely worth looking at. And then without getting too jargony, if you are interested in LoRaWAN coverage, so LoRaWAN, again, as Owen said, this wireless network that underpins a lot of sensor-based work and was used in Afghani, as we'll talk about in a minute. If you want to see if your place is covered by that network already, which many places in Wales are, you can use something called the Thing Network Mapper, TTN Mapper. Again, it's a free resource online. You put in your place and it will show you what coverage you have. As LoRaWAN tends to be, it's not the most intuitive maybe, but it's actually a fairly straightforward tool to use. And if you are nerdy like me, you can contribute it to as well by wandering around your town with a sensor and a smartphone, mapping that sort of stuff on. But enough of the nerdiness, right? Other things to think about when you're talking about delivery then, funding options. Yeah, show me the money. There are some really good opportunities out there. Obviously, public funding is tight in many ways at the moment, but there is, particularly in Wales, there is really good opportunities for funding Smart Towns projects. Biggest one is probably through Welsh Government's Transforming Towns programme. That has a placemaking grant element, and that placemaking grant has a digital towns strand, I suppose, and that is generally used to fund sort of capital projects. That's usually administered by a local authority, so speak to them about the availability of that funding and whether they can help you put together an application for it. We've also then got the UK Shared Prosperity Fund that has sort of digital written through it, I suppose, around community digital infrastructure, around digital skills. There are lots of different ways that most public funding programs have digital written through them now. So there are ways to get Smart Towns projects funded or match funded at least through those. Of course, you can always use your own budget, which is usually quicker and easier depending on the organisation. And I guess the thing to emphasise here is that obviously a lot of smart towns projects, they don't have to be really expensive. And if you do that, start small and have a go, and then build on it, makes it even more cost effective. If it's something sensor based, sensors tend to cost sort of tens or maybe £100 each, and then the underlying infrastructure, the gateway, for example, which might already be in place and you might not know about it, even those, run to a few £100s. So for a sort of a town-based scheme, we're talking about, maybe hundreds or a few £1,000s, not tens of thousands of pounds, not scary amounts of money to find. And I guess the other thing to flag up is that Owen mentioned it earlier, is that we have a really exciting sort of ecosystem of Welsh and Wales-based businesses working in the smart town space. We wanted flagging up a few here, just because they're people we've worked with and really think are fantastic, but there are loads more out there as well. So just because we haven't mentioned them here, they're not great. We've got Scott and Will in Sensibility up in North Wales, who are fantastic at designing some sensitive schemes. We've got Gary at Morgan Walsh, who is going to running the workshop next week on using data. He's a real guru of data-driven decision making and putting together schemes. Patron, which you will come across, a fantastic platform for making public footfall data and other environmental data as well, developed here in Wales, by a Welsh company, and then Vista Smart Towns as well, Victoria Man. We've got a really great ecosystem of businesses doing great work. It's made in Wales, for Wales, and because of that, we have a real opportunity to influence it. So that's not to say there aren't loads more companies from around the world who are doing this sort of stuff. There are, but there are some great ones in Wales too, who generally are really approachable, and you can reach out to for advice, or to contract them, hopefully, in the end. So just to fill in the last gaps around Abergavenny then. So got some techie pictures on the screen. It's always fun, isn't it? So Abergavenny Town Council, they'd identified this opportunity. They're representing Wales in the towns category in the final Britain Bloom this year. Big thing for a fairly small town. And they, realised that they could do their sort of, they thought they could do something better and smarter in terms of monitoring their green infrastructure. So they actually found some budget themselves, and helped them sort of design and cost the scheme. And they contracted Sensibility, who I mentioned, based up in North Wales, to help spec out the scheme and actually procure the sensors and set them up and things. So they weren't doing this themselves; they had some great support. And the process started with Sensibility trying to find a location for that LoRaWAN gateway, which is that ugly white box on the blue column in the middle of the picture there, halfway up. That's the underpinning bit of kit. And that's the bit that I mentioned, that the local authority were going to make that digital investment. They had these bits of kit they wanted to get into their town centres. They just needed a bit of a helping hand to do so. So the first thing Sensibility did was, work out, okay, where would it be best to put that gateway in terms of providing good coverage, which will cover the planters. They did some nice modelling of that and provided the town council and the local authority with that data. And that sort of really sped up the process of getting that gateway installed, like that picture shows on the CCTV column, which was already there in the middle of the town centre. They then procured the sensors. Now you can see one of the sensors in the right-hand picture, similar to the one that I've got in front of me. It's a very boring-looking black box, as things tend to be. The soil moisture sensors, I think the cost are around £120 each. They have a 5-year battery life, and they can be replaced. And you can pretty much completely bury them. So that's before being completely buried in that picture. Bury them in the soil. There are 3 prongs out of shot, which stick in the soil. They're very, very discreet, and they provide data on soil moisture levels, alkalinity, I think it is, which is sort of measure of soil health, and temperature. And the town council scheme, they put, I think it's 10 of those in planters around the town. So I think they had basically 50% coverage of the number of planters they had. And yeah, it ended up, as you've seen, producing this fantastic dashboard, giving them basically real-time data at a planter level about soil moisture levels, alkalinity, temperature. And this dashboard and this data, and there are various different views, that's just one view I've shown on screen, was made accessible to the town council themselves, to the volunteers who do all the hard work in terms of managing the planters, and also the contractor who is paid by the town council to come in and do the watering. So this is one of the big areas they identified. They thought we spend a fair amount of money on this contractor coming in from another town with a barrels of water and watering these planters. We think this can probably be done better. So that data was made open to those people, and it will soon be put on the town council's website and made public as well, which is a really exciting next step, because we think that's something we really strongly advocate is opening the data up to everyone who wants to use it. And yeah, as I think we mentioned earlier, it contributed pretty heavily to Abergavenny being awarded this sort of discretionary award for sustainable gardening by Britain in Bloom just a couple of weeks ago. And yeah, one of the sort of the big reasons for that was their sort of innovative use of smart technology to help them manage that they're growing. Now, they only got this in over the summer, so it's too early to say in terms of hard metrics of success, I suppose, or maybe not success. You know, it's been successful in many ways already, but hard metrics about whether it will help them save water. Hopefully, there'll be some carbon savings as well by reducing the number of trips the person bringing the water in has to make, and hopefully save the town council money. This scheme didn't cost very much to put in, low thousands. So the potentials for financial savings are very good pretty soon, but it's too early to tell at the moment. We're going to work with them next year to work that out and to identify that. But it's been we think it's a really great example of a place in many ways taking it on themselves based on the work we did with them and identifying this opportunity and getting it done, contracting someone to help them in a fairly sort of cost-effective way. And they've got some really great results so far. And it means, and they want to do more. I mean, they're really enthusiastic, mainly because they started small and they've got this working and they've seen it in action. And they're really keen to look at air quality now and other measures as well. And I've got all confidence that they'll go on and do that. If you want to know more about the Abergavenny case study, just flag up that we did produce a case study for Smart Towns Cymru on this specific scheme, and it goes into the detail of the individual census and costs and all that sort of stuff. So that's freely available on the Smart Towns Cymru website as well. But obviously it was produced a few months ago when the scheme was very, very fresh. So it doesn't have some of the end product stuff in, although we'll probably look to update it quite soon. But if you'd like to know more about the Abergavenny example or others, again, take a look at the Smart Towns Cymru website. It's a great wealth of resources. So that's about it for sort of introduction delivery. Again, we talked for days about it, but try to keep it fairly brief. Does anyone have any questions or comments about those things I mentioned, or about previous stages, or about, I guess, anything we talked about today?
Can you hear me? Can I just ask if how long it took for Abergavenny to get the system up and running? Because I'm over in Conway and we're doing Conway and Bloom, and we've just started and we want to develop it. And I just wondered how long it takes to get that infrastructure set up. And do you need somewhere one of those big poles with all the techie stuff on in order to do it? You have to have both, do you?
So in the Abergavenny scheme, the individual census, you need that. You need a box, a LoRaWAN gateway, it's called, covering your town. You may well have one already. I should probably know.
I think Conway, you will have good coverage because they've just had a load of grant money. And Scott Andrews, who is the consultant for sensibility, is based in Conway Council as well.
Oh, right.
So if you don't already have it, then I think that could be sorted out for you pretty quickly there.
Can I just also ask, given that Conway is unusual in that we are made up of 3 or 4 disparate areas: Diganway, Llandudno Junction, and Conway, which is a national historical site. I'm interested in ways we could use smart towns to bring these different communities together in sharing information and getting information out to the local communities. Is there a way that smart towns might address those sort of issues?
I'd say I've definitely. I mean, it's having data to talk about and compare. I think is a really good way to bring people together. I'm sure. But have a conversation with Kiki and her colleagues afterwards, and I imagine they can. Or with us equally, and I'm sure we can draw something up.
Thank you.
Sorry, can I just butt in there as well? Because I'm also from Conwy Town Council. Hi, Jackie.
Hi.
I'm chair of the communications subcommittee as well. So part of me attending these, and with me being a STEM ambassador and digital champion and everything else, is to try and get sort of Conwy and our communities working together, and also sort of improving the offering that we have in Conwy for tourism, and also monitoring sort of where visitors are from, and then obviously trying to get the businesses. I was hoping to get like the Chamber of Trade involved.
Yeah.
So obviously then we can get like heat maps of where the visitors are, where they're coming from, and then sort of tie that in with, what we as a town council can be doing as well. Now I was literally thinking about you, Jackie, in one of the last sessions when they were talking about the planters, like Conwy and Bloom and things as well. So I was going to do it on the report back, but you beat me to it, as you hear.
I was away, so thank you for that.
Yeah, so I did forward the things on through Rachel for the previous sessions, and they did mention that the Laura Wan and other bits and bobs, but we do probably have them, but it was something I was going to bring up as well to investigate what we already have in Conwy that we can make use of. So, thank you.
Thanks, Tracy. We're planning a workshop Conwy-wide. We're talking to Jasmine, who works in Regen at the County Council.
Just met her this morning.
Oh, amazing! Love how
I was at
the
launch thingy, what was called already, the development, a destination management plan this morning. So I was there this morning. I'm here this afternoon. So I've met Jasmine this morning. So it's something that I was going to try and tie them in, because a lot of that was talk about data and tourism and where people are coming from, and that ties in with obviously our trying to get our links with Himeji sort of up and running, twinning and linking with Himeji. So so I'll shut up now. Sorry.
Great. Well, yeah. Well, hopefully we'll be sending invites out for that by next week. So it'd be a good opportunity, like you said, as well, to collaborate with other towns and see what's available. So yeah, look forward to carrying on that conversation. Thank you. Owen, do you have something to add there?
Yeah, no, I just found that small window into what's going on in Conwy really interesting, because it kind of tells us, doesn't it, that you know there's some stuff there, but you're not quite sure what it is and what it can do for your town. You've kind of got some ambition around things that you want to do, and maybe that you've got a clear sense of priorities, and kind of the idea, the principles behind what we were talking about today is kind of knowing what you've got, kind of having your stakeholders involved, and then kind of using that process to lead towards the actions that you want to take. Sounds to me that you're either on that journey or you will join that journey fairly soon. We have said it already. I just urge caution not to kind of jump to a solution for a problem that you want to solve without kind of getting those foundational elements in place first. And you may find actually with Kiki support and others that information is really quick to get hold of, and you might move along that plan making process incredibly quickly. But it's just interesting to hear that little snippet of conversation kind of hint at the value of this process we've been talking about.
Right. Well, I'll hand back over to Kiki now, but just to say thank you very much from us for your time. And if you'd like to get in touch with me or Owen, email addresses on screen, or we can find us on LinkedIn, or feel free to contact us through Smart Towns Conwy.
Thank you both. That was fantastic. I think so many kind of real world examples, but also some really useful resources in there as well. Sorry, we've got a hand up there. Is it Ashland? Sorry, I'm not sure what your name is. Hand's gone down. Tracy, is your hand up? No, just clapping. Oh, okay. Sorry. I'm emoji illiterate apparently. Yeah, so thank you guys. Really great session. And don't forget, we've got next week a session with Gary Howell on turning that data into decisions. So I think that's the kind of next logical step in the series. It'd be great if you could all attend. Just to note, if you haven't signed up for that session, you won't receive a link as a result of being in this session. So you need to make sure that you sign up for each session so that you're not left out. And yeah, so I think that's everything. So diolch yn fawr iawn. Thank you all very much, and look forward to chatting again soon. Take care.